conversation today. And remember, the question we're asking you today is, should deadbeat fathers be listed with CRB as proposed by Senator Irungu Kang'ata? As I said, you can send in your feedback at KTNewsKE, at Grace Career KE. You can also call in live. The numbers will be below your screen shortly, just to send in your contribution to our discussion today. And even before I get to my guests, I see a lot of feedback already. Onesimus saying he is retrogressive. By the way, some progressive nations are kicking out childcare. Childcare is anchored on the old British common law, when the man was the sole provider. Now that the woman is empowered, it's time we allowed men to live their lives. I'm not sure I'm in full agreement with these sentiments there by Onesimus. There's one more by Timothy Mukiti, who says, while I'm a firm believer in parents, that is both providing for their progeny, family law matters are hardly straight line. Each case has its nuances. Proposing CRB listing is suggesting a straight line solution to something that hardly occurs the same way for each case. Bad idea. Sentiments there by Timothy. Of course, you can send in yours. KTNewsKE, Grace Career KE. You can also call in live. So let me now get to my guests who are already with me. Mr. Ben Kinothia.
Thank you.
A parent and a life coach. And Madam Nasanga Aki there, an advocate with the Kenya Human Rights Commission. Karibuni sana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Maybe I could start with the question that we are posing to our viewers. There's that bill proposed by Murang'a Senator Irungu Kang'ata to have, among other things, which we'll be discussing, have the deadbeat fathers listed with CRB. Are you in agreement?
First and foremost, I must thank KTN for having thought it necessary to have this conversation. I do not think the sun will ever set on such a glorious day as this, because you have taken a topic that is at the heart of very many people. This is something that affects almost each and every household to some extent, because not all marriages are smooth, not all homes are running very easily. And when you give it this amount of time and this amount of prominence, we are happy, because this is something that is affecting very many families. So discussing such a matter is important, because if the bill were to pass or fail to pass, either way it's going to affect the lives of very many Kenyans. So before I even say whether or not I support the bill, I must say that giving it this amount of time on air is a very nice thing. But of course, moving swiftly forward is that that bill has not been presented to us. We are not aware of the complete contents of it. But from the face of it, what is CRB? CRB is a place where you put someone who has already had an experience financially, and make sure that that person will never have another financial loan given to them. I mean, you take someone who has done business, for example, leave people who borrow money from the phone and then they use it to drink alcohol. But there are many people who've gone to conventional banking systems and they've asked for a loan. And they have gone and they have made business mistakes, or they have acquired business experience. And then what we have done is we have taken that person and put them in a place called CRB, which means is that we have barred a person who's already acquired experience from accessing funds to run a business. And now we get someone who has never had experience with getting money, and that is a person we finance. And that person finds themselves on CRB. Then so every other person who comes and gets an experience on how to handle money is put on CRB. So I do not think it's a good idea. I do not think it makes any sense. There are things that you cannot cure by legislation, and this is one of them.
Sure. Yeah. Nasanga, I need to get your thoughts on that, but maybe let me just take you through some of the components of this proposal, because he proposes, let me just read them out, that the Immigration Department should bar deadbeat fathers from leaving the country for business. If the deadbeat fathers are businessmen, then the senator proposes the county government be allowed to suspend their business licenses. Also, the deadbeat's dad will only be allowed to resume their business operations once child support has been cleared. And the senator also wants deadbeat fathers barred from getting certificate of good conduct, which is nowadays a requirement for most employers. Are you in agreement?
It's an interesting bill, and just like my fellow panelists, I have not had the advantage of reading the fine print of the bill, and my comments essentially will just depend on, will be based on what has been presented by the media so far. But then again, I would wish to thank KTN for the invitation to discuss this interesting yet yet controversial topic in equal measure. But again, the topic is very timely and very necessary, especially in the current context that we live, a very liberal society, where we have many children born out of wedlock, and the issue of child maintenance is on the increase. When you go to our courts, you see the child maintenance cases are ever on the rise. We have the Children Act, which has provided mechanisms that are already speaking to enforcement of child maintenance orders. And I think the amendment by the Senator is just to add on the mechanisms that are already in force. However, I am not in agreement with the other stringent provisions that the Senator is proposing. I think they're well-intentioned, but the execution is the problem. You know, listing people on CRB, denying them a certificate of good conduct. It's basically paralyzing these deadbeat fathers, and I'm very worried. I don't know what the language of the bill is. I hope it's not only targeting fathers. It should be written in a gender-neutral language, so that it's not only targeting the deadbeat fathers, but parents who are irresponsible. I say it will be paralyzing these parents, and they come in a very punitive spirit, and I think the mechanisms in the Children Act, they're just meant to enable the children be provided for, but not punish the parents, because I hold that you cannot uproot a tree and expect to find fruits still. So it's punishing the parents, but in the long run, it would also be punishing the children.
By extension. I actually wish we had him here, because we had agreed to have him at least on phone just to tell us more about this bill, but it turns out it's not possible. But we will proceed, you know. So there's a comment I started, I read it out when we started, by one Onesimus, and the last bit, it got my attention, because he says that now that the woman is empowered, it's time we allowed men to live their lives. I don't want to sound biased, but I'm not in agreement with it. You're a man. Do we allow men to live their lives?
I will say this. You see, first, I'm a lawyer by profession, but I'm a motivational speaker and a life coach by obligation. And I have come to love the second place more than the first, but both are part of me. And there are things that you cannot cure by legislation. Right now, boys are going through the rite of passage. It's the month of November and December. And as a motivational speaker, I have been called to a number of churches and institutions to go and speak to these young men. And to speak to the young ladies as well. Of course, the ladies are not going through the cut, but we're saying we are sharpening their mind, we are cutting their mind, and so on and so forth. And what we need to do as a nation is to realize that the best time to cure this malady is when these people are young. This is when we need to invest. Those people who are shouting and saying that men need a chance to live their life, that is not the calling of a man. The calling of a man is to be a provider. And a man needs to take obligation and to accept responsibility for every action that they take. Because if we allow people to father children and not support those children, then it becomes a bad thing. And when I'm out there and I'm talking to people, I usually tell them, in all customs, in all traditions, whether in Europe or wherever you go, there has been this thing about the hands of a parent. In the hands of a parent, the creator of the universe put the blessings of the children in the hands of the parent. So it is your duty and your responsibility to bless your child every morning and every evening. Just place your hands on them and bless them. What that does is subconsciously, every time you tell a child you are blessed, you're blessed, you're blessed, you're blessed, it's the power of the subconscious mind. It becomes part and parcel of their life. And they live believing their lives that they are blessed people and that they're supposed to be a blessing in life. Those people will grow up knowing that they're a blessing in life. We are not raising kids the way they're supposed to be raised. And that is the result of what we see today. When you see people who feel that it's okay for me to have a child who eats from the streets and the guy is clubbing every other night, something is wrong with that father. And so the best time to raise fathers is now when they are young. The best time to raise mothers is now when they are young, because I've also seen, and that bill should probably have addressed this issue, of women who say they cannot breastfeed past even 1 month because, I don't know, their boobs are going to sag and they're not going to look beautiful. This is already someone denying a child their rightful share of what they should have, just because they think that they want to go and slay on Instagram and so on and so forth. So we need to start raising fathers today, and we need to start raising mothers today. And we can only do that by looking at the generation that is coming up, talking to them at this point in time when they are going through rites of initiation, and teaching them about transitioning. Because every time in life you're transitioning from class 8 to Form 1, from Form 1, you know, and even gets to the point where now you transition to become a parent, and you discover that there are friends of yours who are not parents that you may not hang out with as often as you used to, because when you become a parent now, your duties and responsibilities change. So the best time to nurture parents is now. And the best way to nurture them is to talk to them and to show them what responsible parenting is and what it is not. Yeah.
It's something you mentioned, and I'll be getting back to it, but before that I want to get your thoughts regarding that comment. Now that the woman is empowered, it's time we allowed men to live their lives. I find it offensive, by the way.
It is very, very offensive. I agree with you. And I think someone also mentioned that that idea of parental responsibilities are an old British thing that should be done away with.
The same person, actually.
It's the same person.
Childcare is anchored on the old British common law, when the man with the sole provider. It's retrogressive. Some progressive nations are kicking out childcare. My goodness.
I think his thoughts are very retrogressive, because childcare is not anchored in the old British laws. We actually have it in our Constitution of Kenya, yes, 2010, where Article 53E says that parental responsibility shall be shouldered by both parents equally. Now, I think it is very selfish of that person. Those comments are very selfish, because that person is just thinking about the parents of the child and not the child. And whenever we are discussing children matters, we always anchor everything on the best interest of the child principle, which basically requires that in whatever decision you're making, you have to ensure that it is going to be in the best interest, to the best advantage of the child. So, and another thing we need to understand is parental responsibility is not only financial contribution. It is both monetary and non-monetary. With respect to monetary contribution, I think the proposal by the Senator majorly speaks about the financial contribution. But it goes beyond that. It goes to guidance that a parent is supposed to offer the child. It goes to the emotional support, the psychological support, religious guidance, all those kind of things. But most of the times we only concentrate on the financial contribution, which requires the provision of the educational needs, the health needs, clothing, food and shelter, the basic needs of a child. When we understand that parental responsibility is both financial and non-financial, then I think maybe he will change his thoughts and see the importance of having both parents being in a child's life. Because when children grow older, you always hear that people speak about this person has daddy issues or mommy issues because they missed something when they were growing up. They missed love or care from a particular parent. Yeah. So we do not want an unbalanced kind of society where children do not get parental care from both parents. Yeah.
Sure, and I hope he's watching Onesimus. You need to hear that. So, Ben, there's something you mentioned about the mothers too. Yeah. You know, those who refuse to breastfeed their children past a certain age. I'm curious though, because they're deadbeat mothers too, right? Yes. Why are we so harsh on the dads? Why is this bill only about the deadbeat fathers? Why don't we remember that there's some deadbeat mothers too?
It's interesting.
Or do we choose to ignore that fact?
You see, not all victims are men, but all the men are victims.
I like that.
This bill, the people who authored it had seen that to a large extent it is the men who are not taking parental responsibility seriously. The bulk of our men have become irresponsible with how they go about life after having sired children. And it is this that was supposed to have been curtailed. The only thing that Senator Irungu Kang'ata has lost it is sometimes I don't speak without going back to my background in law. First and foremost, we elect men and women who sometimes, even being lawyers, don't understand what they are doing. This is a bill that should not have gone to Senate. This is a bill that should have gone to Parliament, because at Senate, we are supposed to be discussing devolution and all matters that do with devolved governments. And the senator is using taxpayers' money to take such a bill to Senate. It's such a waste of our public time. I mean, even in the Constitution, it's not supposed to work that way. So I think taming the men, as I have always said, because many people believe that this bill is supposed to tame men and so on and so forth, is something that needs to be done at this point in time. There's a serious crisis in terms of how we are raising the boy child. The boy child needs attention, and the boy child needs to know what is his role as a man in this life. The problem is that we have not raised the boy child to understand the purpose of a man in life and what a man is supposed to do and what a man is not supposed to do. If we take time and train the boy child, because most of the time when you talk to women and when you have a small disagreement with a woman, and both of you are ladies here, very many women know what they don't want. They'll tell you, I don't want you to come home late, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want you texting girls. They'll tell you what they don't want. The bulk of you, unfortunately, do not know what you want. And this is where men come in. And the responsibility of a man is to know what is good for his family and to provide leadership and to provide direction. And that's why a man is the opposite. When you have a disagreement at home, he'll tell you, from tomorrow, don't come past 8 p.m. He'll not tell you, I don't want you to come late. He'll tell you, from tomorrow, I want my tea served this way. So men know what they want. And men are supposed to know what they want, and they're supposed to provide direction, and they're supposed to provide leadership. The problem we have right now is that the head is no longer there in many instances. The person who is supposed to provide leadership, the person who is supposed to be the priest of the house, is unavailable. And when that happens, the lady who was by design supposed to have been led by the man in the house has become the head of the house. And there are things you cannot do for a boy child. There are things that, my father died in 2011. Up to date, he still fathers me. There are things I sit and think in retrospect and say, if my dad was here today, this is how he would have gone about something. Let me tell you something, because I earn from motivation, speaking, and inspiration, and training people. When a child is 4 years old, they think that their father knows everything under the sun. By the time they are 8 years old, they start thinking, my father knows some things. He knows some things, he knows some things. By the time they are 12 years old, this boy starts thinking, my father doesn't know a lot of things. There are so many things my dad doesn't know. By the time this boy is 18, the boy is saying, my dad is old-fashioned. Okay, and God is gracious, because by the time this boy is now 30 and he's married and settled, he starts saying, my father was patient.
Yes.
He used to live with this. My father was a good guy. My father is a good. So they start looking for him again. By the time you're 35, you're saying, my father is the wisest man who ever lived. It goes on, and by the time you're 50, you're saying, oh my goodness, I wish I could go to my father's grave and wake him up and have advice from him on how to live with a woman and how to manage a home and how to be a man in the circumstances of this life. So, and we need to know and appreciate all these stages. So as we are raising boys, we have to know at 4 what they are thinking, at 12 what are they thinking, and so on and so on. And a man at 55, their biggest hero, if you ask them, is their father. Yeah. So that is a missing link. And what this senator should have been thinking about is these people are getting a lot of funds to do community empowerment and so forth. Why don't we start investing in talking? In fact, we can even change the curriculum and have one session once a month where someone external comes to the school and talks to them about transitioning and talks to them about life after school. Because you'll become a parent. How will you handle parenthood? Yeah.
As a life coach, motivational speaker, a man, a father yourself, you've talked about, the age of 30, 35, 50, where you now start looking for your dad.
Yes.
So what happens if he's not around, either because he's he's not alive or he is a deadbeat?
Good. And that's why we have so many men who have no idea what to do. In the unique design of this life, it was ensured that what you cannot get from your own parents, you can get from this life itself. That's why we have life coaches. That's why we have inspirational speakers. That's why we have pastors. That's why we have religious leaders. And that's why we even have leaders in the community. We have people who are respectable, who can be looked up to. And you can adopt a father. I have always said you can adopt a father. You can always look at a man who is responsible and who has lived life and struggled through, because a family is a struggle. I can tell you it's not easy to keep a family together. It's not easy to have a man and wife together. The easiest thing is usually to walk out. And many people do that. But for those who stick in, those are heroes. And so the best thing to do is to try as much as possible to talk to people who are being through those challenges, people who have understood what it means to go through life as a family together, and to stick it out, because the challenge we have is people want an easy life. People who want a spouse with whom they'll be on honeymoon all their life. And that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. In fact, opportunities will whisper at you, but challenges will shout at you. Challenges usually have a microphone and a loudspeaker, and they come packaged. They even have a PA and a loud system. And challenges will yell at you and they'll disturb you. And the voices telling you that the time to separate is now will usually be louder than the whisper that tells you, maybe if you wait for tomorrow, things will be better. So we need to tell our young people that as being a man is not easy, and taking parental responsibility is not easy, but you have to stick it. You have to stay in there. You have to try as much as possible and to raise these children and give them the benefit of having a father who is present. I tell you, my father fathers me to date because there are so many times I sit and I'm in a quagmire. And I ask myself, what would my dad have done? And in many cases, I always get an answer because I remember how he was present. Sometimes he didn't even do much. He just needed to be in the sitting room. And because we fear him, or because we revere him, there are things we would not do just because he's there. Being present means a lot. That's what many men think. I have provided, I bought for them a TV, it's a big one. I have. No, there are times when my mom would tell me, I will tell your dad. But the fear of who my father was enough to cause me not to do anything wrong, because I knew vita ya dadi ni tofauti na ya mom. Yeah? So that alone, just being present, being in the house as a father, and being seen by your children to be there, makes them kind of know that there is a father in this house. And that notion of nikichapwa na dadi sitawai sahau, that alone stops them from doing something wrong and prepares them for a future.
Sure. Okay, we'll need to take a break in a few, but Nasanga, I'd like you to just take us through, what the law says about this, the Constitution, the Children's Act, because I'm aware of Section 23 of the Children's Act, which provides for parental responsibility and defines parental responsibility to mean all the duties, rights, powers, authority, which by law a parent of a child has in relation to the child and the child's property. But just take us through what our law, our Kenyan law says. Okay.
With respect to parental responsibility, we will have to start with the Constitution, where I have rightly said that Article 53E provides that every child has a right to parental care, which includes parental responsibility being offered to the child equally by both parents, whether they are married or unmarried. Now, a lot of debate usually comes around this equal parental responsibility, where people wonder, is it 50-50? But the position, as has been held by the courts, is that it's not a mathematical 50-50. It usually depends on the income and the financial muscle of the parent, basically. You have quoted Article Section 23 of the Children Act. It defines parental responsibility, and you have said the Act says it includes duties, responsibilities, powers, and all the rights that a parent has in relation to the child. And it further goes to outline the parental responsibilities as financial and non-financial. And with respect to financial related responsibilities, they're the basic rights of a child to food, to shelter, to clothing, to medical care, and to education. And the non-financial one is the guidance that a parent ought to give to a child. It could be religious, psychological, emotional, and so on. Now, most of the times, this issue of parental responsibility usually kicks in when parents of the child are separated. And there has to be a decision as to the quantum of contribution that has to be given to the child in terms of parental responsibility. And the most controversial one is around the financial bit. How much should one parent contribute to the child? How much should another contribute? And as I've said, the courts will look at a lot of factors in determining the contribution that a child has to be given by a particular parent. And among the things that will be factored in is the financial muscle of whichever parents, other responsibilities that the parents have, maybe the future prospects of finances that a parent also has. Because remember, we do not live in families that, we no longer live in families that are the nucleus, the ideal nuclear families, but we have instances of co-parenting, children being born out of wedlock a lot. And a parent, you will find that a parent has responsibilities towards a child who has been born out of wedlock, but then again, they have other children within another family setup. So when determining the quantum of parental responsibility that this parent has to contribute, you will have to factor in the rights of this child born out of wedlock together with the other children. And the courts have also said that parental responsibility shouldn't frustrate a parent. Because children are a blessing to parents. They shouldn't be deemed as, burdens that frustrate parents and even sometimes make them lose interest in life. Because if you're overburdened with financial contribution, at times you will want to give up. And unfortunately, we have women who are using the financial responsibility aspect as cash cows. They will want to squeeze mint money out of the men. I say women because that is what we experience in the context currently. I know there could be a few men, the roles might reverse, but primarily, majorly, it is the women who do that. And they would want, I have handled cases where the men almost want to give up. They say, if it is this small salary that I am getting that wants to be minted out of me completely, then I would rather just give up my employment. Let me not be employed then. Let us see how this child will survive. And it shouldn't get to that because it is to the disinterest of the child. And unfortunately, again, the bile between two people who their relationship has ended for one reason or another usually interferes with the best interest of the child, so that someone wants to enforce parental responsibility in such a way that hurts the other party. But the courts are very keen to see that at the end of the day, it is just the best interest of the child that are being protected. Further, with respect to enforcement of the parent, because once courts give orders on parental responsibility, they have to be enforced. And the Act provides various ways in which the orders can be enforced.
Certainly. Thank you for that, Nasanga. So we need to take a break, but we're back with the conversation after this break. A lot of feedback. Martin Akech saying those are knee-jerk solutions which are not carefully analyzed. The interest of the child is not fully catered for by CRB listing. Dangort saying every man should take care of their children even if it's by force. Joseph says, I strongly disagree with it. Waiting for the show. That was before the show started. And then Sirengo Brian Nicholas says, Nani bado anaogopa CRB. Just asking. Okay, so keep it coming at Grace Career KE at KT News KE. You can also call in live after the break just to send in your contribution. So do stay with us. Let's take that break.